So today's topic is actually very simple. It's not a very difficult topic, but you can consider it to be a small training which goes over the on-screen editing options which are currently available in COMOSYS. So I'll go through them one by one. There are several, there are quite a few. So let's start with the basically all the objects at the moment in COMOSYS have their own on-screen editing capabilities. And I'm going to go through all of them. As you can see on the screen, I've prepared a model for you. So if I zoom in over here, we have the classical frame object. Now, in the frame object, if we select any frame, you immediately start seeing these handles. And now you can turn off these handles from this toggle switch over here. If you turn it off, then when you select an object, the handles are not displayed. But when this one is toggled to on, then selecting any object will display its handles. The handles are then used for on-screen editing. Now, these handles are of many different types. So for example, in this one, I can select this. And as you hover over them, you will see that they get selected. So I can select the entire frame, the start and the end together. Or I could then, if I go towards the end, this one is basically the end point, just like this one is the start point. So this little tail which is coming out, this tail is the start point, and this tail is the end point. The colors are also different, so you can tell from the color as well. But basically, it's this little tail which, so if, for example, if I were to select this tail, I get several options. This new menu appears. And for example, if I click on this one, I can say move 500 in the X direction. Say move, that endpoint is moved in the X direction, 500. Now, just like that one, there's another option over here. For example, if I select this slightly rotated member and I select the endpoint tail, in this case, if I'm sorry, if instead of using this end tail, if I select this little arrow over here, as you can see, this is a different handle from this one. This one is basically what we just saw, but this arrow is a different handle. And if I select the arrow, then I have two options. One gives me a chance to basically enter any number. So I can say 150 and I say forward. It's basically going to extend it in the current direction of that element. Now, the other option is interesting. If I go like that, if I select this arrow once again, and I use the other option, this one over here, it says extend to the surface. Now, if I do that, if I say it asks me to select a surface, so I can just go, I can press on this button and select this, let's say this wall over here. And when I do that, immediately my frame is, the endpoint is extended to that surface. So that's a convenient option. Let me undo that. Another way of doing the same thing would have been, so this one, if you remember, it extends along the direction of the frame. But if I had not chosen this arrow, but instead if I had chosen the tail, which is the endpoint, and then if I had chosen this last option over here, I would still get my select surface, which means extend to a surface option. But in this case, when I do that, it's not going to extend it like that. It's going to basically project this point to the surface. So if I select this, it's going to project that point to that surface over there. Now, another area where handles can be used very nicely is what we call adjust. Adjusting is a very common feature in COMOSYS, in which, so for example, if you have a model like this, in which a beam is, let's say the size of this beam is 400, and the beam has been entered and the vertical braces have been entered like that. Now, as you can see, the working point of the vertical braces is at the top of the beam, which is not something we want. We want them to be in the middle of the beam. But the problem with this is if I enter it at the middle of the beam, then the finite element model, which can be seen by doing, for example, Alt-D, you can see the finite element model is connected at the moment. But if I move the braces down physically, the finite element model will be disconnected. I don't want to do that. So I have another handle which doesn't change the formal finite element model, but moves the or offsets the frame to a desired location. Now for that, for example, if I select this one, if you remember, I chosen the tail over here. But instead of the tail, if I go inside and if I select this one, the little circle inside over there. And now if I give it a distance of, for example, minus 200 in the Z direction, and if I say move, you can see that my frame element is still connected to the top, but the physical element has been given an offset. And this appears in the form of these numbers, which are difficult to calculate otherwise. You can do them like this as well, but it's much easier, for example, select this one, then go in and select the adjust button handle over there and say move. And now both the vertical bracing have been moved to that point while my finite element model has been maintained. So this is a very useful way of moving around the offsets of your frame elements. Now, another thing which I want to show is if I select any frame element, you can also see the length, the length of the element over. And if I select that little text box over there, this option opens up. And here I can change that number to, for example, 6,000. But then I have an option of 3 different buttons over here. If I press this button, it's going to extend it to the top. So if I go like that, it's going to make the 6,000 the total distance like that. Let me undo that. If I select the 5,000 again, make it 6,000 again, and I press this one, it's going to extend it to the bottom, which is also useful sometimes. And similarly, if I were to select it again and make it, for example, 7,000, and I press this middle button, it's going to change that number from both the start and the end, this middle button over here. So if I do that, you can see that the length of the column changes in both directions. So that's a useful new feature. Now the similar thing over here, we have similar handles with the curved beam and the poly beam as well. If you select a poly beam, for example, you get the same handles. So for example, if I were to select this 3,000 and I say make it 4,000 from the start, it's going to extend it like that. Similarly, I can select this corner chamfer over there, use this chamfer modifying button, and then give it let's say, a radius of 1,000 and say apply. So I have a curved poly beam. So I have control over the endpoints. I can, for example, select this one as the endpoint, move it. This arrow will extend. So if I were to change, for example, if I were to do something like this and select this arrow, I would once again then be extending in the direction of that last segment if I were to just enter a number like that. Or I could select a surface as well, as we did previously. So very convenient, very useful handles to do on-screen editing. Now, when it comes to plates, this was just a summary of the frame elements. If we come to plates, you can see that plates also have very similar. Okay, before I go to plates, one little shortcut I want to mention. This is a shortcut, is also useful for on-screen editing. If you select any frame element, you can press Control Q to rotate it. This is a very quick way of changing the rotation. And similarly, if I were to look at it from the plan view, for example, if I press Control W, I can do this position in plane. And then if I press Control E, I can do the position in depth. So very convenient ways of moving your offsets around by using keyboard shortcuts. Now with the plate element also, if I don't have the control Q option because there's no rotation over here, but I do have the control W option, which is useful. Let me just remove the offsets over here. Yeah. So if I select it, I can press Control W, and you can see that the plate is being offsetted like that. If I select the plate, once again, you have the same handles, the arrow, the endpoints. If I select the arrow, I get the same. I can move it a number, or I can make it extend to a surface, just like we did last time. I can introduce midpoints as well. So for example, if I were over here and I select this midpoint over here, this one, and I can say that I want to, for example, let's put a number, 500, and I say move. I can actually introduce a new point into that plate and then move it around after that. Similarly, the edges, if I select the edges, I can use this one over here to move the edge in basically the direction which keeps the other two edges in the same direction. So this one will not be modified. They'll just be extended. And this is how you can basically enter any number over here. If you don't want that kind of movement, if you want a different kind of movement, then you can actually have an XYZ kind of movement in which you just enter the coordinates and the edge will be moved in that direction. Once again, what you can also do is, for example, press this length, click on this length. And so this is 4,693 point something. I can say maybe make it 5,000. And then press this middle button, which means extend it on both sides. So if I press this middle button, the length will be extended on both sides, just as we discussed with the frame element as well. So quite useful. You can move sides, you can move corners, you can add chamfers, you can insert and delete points. So for example, if I wanted to just delete this chamfer point, which I just created, I could just go in and say, I want to delete it, and the element will be deleted. You can snap to edges and etc. Now let's talk about folded plates. Now folded plates can be entered, as you know, in COMOSYS by using the folded plate command over here under the sectional plate, under the plate commands. And if I select a folded plate, once again, I get the same handles, which means I have my arrow, which means I can extend it. I have the endpoint, which means I can move it. I can select one of these corner points and give it a chamfer if I wanted to, for example. I can say, give it a chamfer of 1,200. So it'll basically do that. What I could do is the segment lengths once again. So I could, for example, if I undo that, if I select this, click on this length and make it 6,000 from the start, it'll basically extend this wall, this folded plate in this direction. So very convenient way of using the arrows, the edges, the endpoints, basically length parameters over here. Now, similar handles are also available with cylindrical plates. As you know, cylindrical plates are available in COMOSYS, which are basically bent plates, in which you can combine many plates together into a combined, what we call a cylindrical plate. And when we select a cylindrical plate, once again, you get those handles. So for example, if I were to modify the cylindrical plate now, I could just go into that 480 and make it something like 350 maybe, and say, move it to the center. And the cylindrical plate is then modified according to that. If I wanted to change, let's say, this one over here, this subplate over here, what I would need to do first is click on this little thing over there. This will make that subplate selectable. And once that subplate is selectable, then I can, for example, select this arrow and say, I want to move this arrow in the -50 direction, for example, something like that. And I have my modified cylindrical plate. So quite useful. The general similarity with all the handles is there. The edge length from both sides can be changed. The handles, basically it's the same, but once you start getting used to these handles, you will then see the similarity as well. The next thing is the cylindrical plate, the sectional plate. As you know, the sectional plate command is available over here as well, which is basically a contour plate, but it is entered with 2 points only. So basically, this is a sectional plate which I've entered by entering just 2 points. Normally, you would for this plate you could enter as a contour plate with 4 points, but I've entered it as a sectional plate with 2 points. Now, in that case, once I select the sectional plate, I get my handles. Once again, the arrow. I can select that arrow and I can say move it 50 like that, and the sectional plate will be extended like that. Obviously, the other parameters of the sectional plate can be just modified by double clicking on it, changing its thickness or width, etc. But this is, as you know, a special plate used very commonly in steel structures. So the sectional plate also behaves with the same handle. Now, another feature which has just kind of come up is, okay, before I go into that, I want to talk about one little thing. We talked about extending the frames to the surfaces. We can actually extend plates to surfaces as well. So for example, if I had this little corner plate, and if I wanted to select it like this, and I wanted to select this edge of this contour plate, and if I do that, and then if I say extend to surface like that, it asks me to select a surface, and I can just select the bottom of the beam over there, for example. And when I do that, immediately it extends that plate, it extends the points until it hits that surface. So very convenient way, instead of moving 2 points and finding the snap points, etc. It's very easy to just select a surface, and the plate will be extended to that point. Let's move on to some bolts, for example, over here. I want to talk a little about bolts. So one feature which we have right now is, if we go to the bolts also have their handles now. So if I select a bolt, there are two plates over here, and they've been bolted together. If I select a bolt, one thing I see is the control Q, which was used for rotating profiles, is available over here to reverse the direction of the bolts. So I can use my control Q to reverse the direction. Now, another thing which I can do, as you can see on the screen as well, is my interbolt distances are also now available. So for example, if I select on this 0, 80, it's basically this distance 80 over here. If I click on that, if I say 80, 80, 80, enter, it's going to basically change that number to 88, and I can change the other one 60, 60, 75, and I can say enter. And so this is like on-screen editing without actually having to double click. So normally you would have to double click on the bolt, go inside, go to the positions, go to the grid and modify them, etc. But now you can do it like that. And the good thing is now that let me just undo that. And if I select this, you can also use the control W and control E parameters. So if the control W will move the position and depth of the bolts, and the control E will position the in the other direction. So you can middle your bolt along any line, any direction you want, and it'll be very, very quickly. Let's quickly move on to the rebar object. Say a few words about that, which is that if you select any rebar, you once again, as you can see, the handles are very similar. They all look like each other. So you can, once you get used to one, you get used to all of them. Once again, you have this arrow, which means it's going to extend it in that direction. The normal endpoint you can move in any XYZ coordinate which you want, but this one will basically extend it downwards. If you select a surface, you can basically make sure it goes all the way, it's extended to a surface. So let's take this edge, for example, and move it a distance of 200. So it's going to move that edge a distance of 200. Very easily doable. All I did was just select this edge. What I could do now is, for example, select this edge and make it go up like that, and the whole rebar is modified. I could insert a midpoint. This is the midpoint handle, which is available in everywhere you see in COMOSYS. Just select this one, and maybe add a midpoint like that. And the whole, you get an extra midpoint in that rebar. Let me undo that. If I select this one, if you remember, this was the text handle. If I click on that and make it 6,500 and press the end button, if I press the middle button, it's going to be done from both sides. So this segment will move a little to this side and a little to that side. Let's do that. So if I do that, you see it's opened up from both sides. This middle segment has been elongated. So very easy to use. Very similar handles. Once you get used to one, you basically get used to all of them. You're already familiar. I'm not going to waste too much time on the linear taper and the circular taper, but the handle usage is basically the same. There's another, the cut objects, which are used for cutting different objects, are also now equipped with handles. So for example, if I were to zoom in, this is a polygon cut. If I were to select this polygon cut, you can see that the corner of the polygon cut can be now moved. They can be chamfered, they can be moved. I can insert new points inside. I can move the edges. I can even change the depth. So this is the depth of the polygon cut. If I just click on this 200 and I make it, say, 120, something like that, and I say apply, I can basically reduce the size of that. So that's quite useful. Once again, like I said, you can give corner, chamfers, etc. This is basically a polygon cut, which you're very familiar with. You can change the chamfers, you can introduce midpoints, you can move edges, etc. Now, this is a normal cut, but what you can also do with this is, if you select the cut, you can do something what is called Control Q. And Control Q will then do a position and depth kind of movement in the cut, just like it would do with a plate. So it's another quick on-screen editing feature which you can use. Now, there are certain macros called notch macros and flange notch macros. These are little detailing macros. And these two now have their own little handles. So when I do a little notch over here, it actually comes in with the exact parameters of the notch, which I can then go in and say, I want 150, and I can say apply, and the notch is modified accordingly. The same thing is obviously possible with the flange notch parameters as well. The plain cut, which is a different cut, as you remember, this is a new cut which was added in the last version. This one, now, as you remember, it had the option of being reversed. So it would basically cut any object. Like basically, it's cut a sphere right now, and it's cut the sphere according to a plane over here. Now, what I can do is if I select this cut and if I press Control Q, it will reverse the cut. As you can see on the screen, pressing the Control Q button will reverse the direction. So it's a quick, fast way of modifying it. Now, parametric cuts also, as you know, you can use parametric cuts over here. If you go into parametric objects, parametric cuts, you have several parametric cuts, but two of them, the box cut and the cylindrical cut, now have their own handles. So if you move into that, you can actually directly change those length parameters of the cuts, or if in this case, the radius of the cylindrical cut, etc. Now, two very useful features, we're coming towards the end now. Two very useful features are the extrusion and the surface of revolution, which are very commonly used with concrete structures. Now, so what you do is in that case, you create what you call parametric surfaces, which you can basically create by using parametric polygons and then parametric paths. So for example, this is a parametric polygon, which needs to be a closed loop. And then this is a parametric path, which needs to be an open, basically it can't be a closed loop, it needs to be an open line. And once you create them, both of them all now have their handles, the length handles, the edge handles, the arrow handles. midpoint handles. You can modify the path. You can give a chamfer to the path, etc. So, for example, then you can use them to use the to create your extrusions or your surfaces of revolution. For example, over here I have created one, and once you've created an extrusion, you can then modify it just like we did. So you have already created this extrusion, but then you can go in and say, I want to move it up. And when you move that little hub, the whole extrusion gets modified. This is very useful. For example, I've created a little kind of a retaining wall over here. Let me go in and see, this is basically the boundary which I used to extrude the retaining wall. I can very easily, for example, go and select this edge over here, this little edge over here, and move it, say, in the X direction. If I say -100, this inclined edge, if you see it on the screen, my whole extrusion solid is modified accordingly. I can move this thing to the top. I can move this edge. I can move the corners. My entire geometry is completely at my disposal. Now, if I select this little thing represents the path. So this represents the shape, and this represents the path. If I select on that, the path is opened. And what I can do over here is I can go to the chamfer point and give it for example, a chamfer of 2000. And this thing is chamfered over there. I can do the same with the other chamfer points, etc. So very, very easily, I can modify all this. This, for example, now is an example of a surface of revolution. Here we have basically, once again, what we just discussed, a polygon. I created a polygon. And then I rotated it around an axis, which basically gave me this shape, which can then be used for concrete modeling, for example, and put rebar in it if you wanted to. But what's beautiful is that if I select this shape, it's parametrically in front of me. This basically, the shape comes out in front of me. And what I can do is, for example, if I select this edge over there, this little edge, and say, if I move it, say -500, and I go like that, you see that the neck is becoming thinner over there. So very easily, I can modify the shape, because the moment I select it, all the corner points are at my disposal. I can move the corner points. I can, for example, move this point to some other location. I can give a different radius to this chamfer point, etc. So very conveniently, I can create my extrusions, my surfaces of revolution. And basically, as you can see, almost every object in COMOSYS, from plates to profiles to bolts to rebars to generic solids to curved beams to poly beams to parametric cuts to normal cuts, all of them have their on-screen editing capabilities, which really make your job a lot easier. So this was basically like kind of a summary and a little bit of a training for somebody who's not regularly using these features. And basically, it'll all be in one place. We have some more plans for this. Some other new features will be coming up as well, and we'll keep talking about those in other webinars. So we hope it was useful for you. I'm going to go stop sharing and see if there are any questions at the moment.